everybody. Welcome to today's stream. Miss everybody a lot. Had a really rough week last week with my my third COVID booster, but all is fine and dandy. So back to streaming. Today, what I want to talk to you about is what should you do with the reviews of papers that are rejected. So not the reviews that are revised and resubmits, reviews that are rejected. And I want especially to focus on those reviews that, just open Twitch here. There we go. See if there's some chatting, I will know. Done. Anyways, so those reviews that you think, these people really didn't read the paper, this is unfair, and so on and so forth. I did get such a review recently, and that prompted me to make this video. I've also saw somebody complaining on Twitter that they stepped out of a paper because their co-authors were just resubmitting the paper to new and lower ranked journals without any changes whatsoever. Okay, so here's the key message from the video. The key message is that there's no such a thing as stupid reviewers. Okay? There's no such a thing as stupid reviewers. There are reviewers that do not know enough to engage with your paper, and there are reviewers that do not review your paper with enough care to engage in it. Okay. First, let's discuss what to do about the first set of reviewers. And there was somebody on Twitter. I'm not super sure if people want me to use their names when they make comments on Twitter or not. So I won't. But someone on Twitter posted today, as I announced this video, complaining about something that has happened to me a couple of times in the past about, I'm a qualitative researcher and I got literally review letters from good journals saying, this paper is great, but it's just qualitative, it's not generalizable. So for me, this is a positioning issue. There are topics in the literature that are heavily quantitative and topics that are heavily qualitative. And there are journals that are heavily quantitative and journals that strike a balance and journals that are more or heavily qualitative, okay? So the way to minimize the risk of having a quantitative person that thinks qualitative research is worthless on your paper is to submit on journals and topics, and the topic is super important. Journals and topics where qualitative research is, if not dominant, at least significant. There's a lot of papers, okay? So thinking about the journals. So for me, the worst journals here are generic journals like Academy of Management Journal, like Journal of Management Studies, and so on. These journals, because they are generic, and because in the past, AMJ would publish, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, AMJ would publish one qualitative paper a year. I remember reading this Beth Batchke paper on AMJ, where this was early 2000s, where she had to say whether her qualitative data had strong, moderate, or weak evidence of her claims, and like for real, like reviewers make you do this in a paper, embarrassing. But I mean, fair play. I mean that she was able to do it in a way that was elegant and insightful. So that's the first thing, okay? And with those reviews, it's just I just think this provides information about the journal and whether you should submit in the future or not, and it provides information about the topic. And sometimes you want to run the risk. So, for example, there was a special issue on what was the a knowledge hiding some time ago, and I had this school qualitative paper on knowledge hiding, and I realized that all of the research on knowledge hiding is quantitative. But I thought, well, maybe they'll because it's a special issue, they'll just think it's fun. They didn't. I got that's rejected. Part of it was because it was quantitative. So that's one thing, and there, it just gives you information about the journal, about the topic, and I do think that there is a way around it that you submit to specific topics, like topics about identity tend to be more qualitative. Topics about control tend to be more qualitative, topics about change and so on. And journals. Now, I want to talk about the second type of reviews, of reviewers that, when you read the review, you feel like they just didn't bother reading the paper carefully enough. They just skimmed through it. And I was, for example, once asked to write a section on a paper. This was in a revise and resubmit letter, fortunately, on a paper that was actually like in the paper with the exact same title of what they asked me to do. So I just basically like changed the wording and said at the place. Because it's really tricky, right? And anyway, I just changed it a little bit so that it wasn't the same as the previous version of the paper. But like, wait, it's there. Like you didn't read it. That was like 4-page section. Anyways, but so what do you do? First thing is be empathetic with reviewers and editors. Editors right now are having a lot of trouble getting reviewers, even for good journals. Reviewers are very busy. Remember, it's still COVID. I personally been, feeling sad once in a while, like really sad. I don't, I'm not depressed or anything, fortunately, but I do feel sad. Sometimes it affects my work. So let's just be compassionate and not think that reviewers are out to get us, or that they're just incompetent because they don't read your paper carefully enough. It's a difficult time for everybody, I think. On the flip side, there are mean reviewers. There are. I hope you haven't experienced it. I have experienced people that use reviews to exhibit really the nastiest behaviors in academia. And there, there's nothing you can do. But most unfair reviews won't be nasty. They'll just be unfair because people have not engaged with your paper as much as they should. Okay? For me, what this says is the following. And it's a very simple message. What this says is the following, is that my argument is too subtle. My argument is too subtle. Because for people to understand my argument, they need to engage carefully with the paper. That means that my argument is too subtle. And by too subtle, it can be, I would say, one of two things. Either you are making a very narrow contribution that can be very important, that can be really missing in the field, but it's very narrow. So somebody who is not familiar with the minutiae of debates in the field will say, there's nothing new here. Or just the way you write your paper, for example, your contribution is just mentioned once in the discussion. For example, in my papers, my discussion has two parts. One, which is closely related to discussing the data, and the second one, which is sort of the broader theoretical contribution of the paper. If the only place where the broader theoretical contribution of the paper is there, which is at the end of the paper, and people are like, they've already read, 4/5 of the paper and they just want to finish, it may be overlooked. Okay? So when I get a rejection like that, for me, the first and key thing that I need to ask myself is, am I almost like splitting hairs, doing an important, I'm not saying it's not important, not saying it doesn't matter, but just that it's narrow. Is my contribution too narrow? If it is, then how can I make it broader? Okay? More appealing to more people. So that if somebody sees my contribution, even if they're not in my field, they'll feel that it is important in their field. The second thing is, how do I make my contribution more visible in the paper? And here, what I would suggest is that you look at your paper and see, is my paper just too efficient, right? Too clean? Am I not repeating myself at all, right? That's important for round 2 or round 3 of the revise and resubmit process, but I would argue that in round 1, there needs to be some repetition, at least with the contribution. So what I will do is I'll make sure that half of the abstract is my contribution, that my contribution is 1/4 of the introduction, and that it is somewhere, that is discussed somewhere in the theory. Okay, so I'm working on a paper now. Okay, and I'm just going to show you. I'm just going to switch to just see the text. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing the text here. I'm going to put it bigger. Okay, so actually I want to put it smaller. So let me put it smaller. You're not supposed to read it, okay? So this is my introduction, okay? This part in green is the contribution of the paper, okay? So when people are beginning to read the paper, they'll even if they don't read everything straight, they'll probably go through the abstract and introduction. Half of the introduction is discussing the contribution of the paper. Now, obviously, this can be dangerous because you're not providing people with enough material, but I think it is less dangerous than just, hiding your contribution at the end of the paper. Hopefully, you'll have a contribution that is cool enough that, people will be curious to read the rest of the paper, okay? So that's what you should do. Now, small note, but important, read the reviews and incorporate everything that you can from the reviews. Like, for example, in the review of this paper, it was once rejected and they told me that I didn't have enough about the context. And I just thought, well, I just cannot extend the method section more. So I made sure that in my data analysis, so in the results section, I did engage a little bit with the context, mostly through quotes. So I didn't do like hardcore like coding and analysis, but that it was there, okay? You will have some good comments in reviews. Don't just resend the paper. Just don't resend the paper. Engage with the reviews, okay? Because maybe, 2 of the 3 reviews that you get, or 1 of the 2 reviews that you get is completely idiotic. And maybe the other review is, 50% they didn't read it, but there will be something. Engage. Also because you may get the same reviewers in other journals, or you may get the editor in one journal the associate editor that is running your paper as reviewer in another. So it's a small world. So be mindful of that, okay? So to summarize, when you get your paper rejected, read the reviews carefully. Incorporate as much as you want. As much as you can. Knowing that sometimes reviewers will ask you to just change the frame of the paper and that is suited to them. So not those bits, but bits about the writing and the argument and its strength. Incorporate that. Second, if your paper is rejected because there's no contribution, ask yourself, is this perhaps too narrow? And then you need to either make a broader contribution or send it to a journal that will appreciate the narrower contribution? Or have I been so efficient in writing this paper, in not repeating myself, especially not repeating the contribution of the paper, that it requires too much of a careful reading for the review process for people to really understand the contribution. Quick tip, make sure that at least 1/3, eventually half, like I do here, of your introduction is about your contribution so that people can see it from the start, okay? I wish you all best of luck. Thanks a lot for everybody who's been commenting and liking the videos. I just cannot tell you how happy it is I am when somebody just puts a like on the video. I get like 1 or 2 per videos. So, it really matters a lot. I really appreciate it. Again, channel's not monetized. The only reward that I get for this work are the likes. So hope you enjoy it. And thanks so much. And hopefully I'll see you on Thursday. I'd like to do another screenwriting video on Thursday, but I will let you know if that is not the case. Thanks so much and good luck with all our papers. Bye-bye.